should you get into software development in 2026? Or if you're already in software development, should you stay? And it's a good question to ask right now because you have various people, saying that, oh, AI is going to replace all knowledge workers, all white collar jobs are going to get wiped out, and that, first ones that AI is coming for are programmers. They're all going to get, replaced by Claude code. So should you stay here? Should you get into this game? Who am I? Why should you listen to me? Why does what I have to say have any holding here? Well, I'm Jake Watkins, and this is my YouTube channel where I say that I talk about a high-tech lifestyle, which is pretty much whatever I want that to be. From talking about peptides to fitness, software development, AI, and riding motorcycles. Algorithm hates me, but it's what I'm going to do. I don't care. I've been programming pretty much my entire life. We built my first computer when I was in third grade. We lived in Jakarta, Indonesia, and we'd fly to Singapore. My dad bought all the components, the motherboard, the chips, 6502 processor, the RAM chips. The Apple II that we built, which was called an Orange, it was a clone, had 48K of RAM, which is mind-blowing to me now. And that's what I got started with. I learned AppleSoft Basic, which was, Bill Gates's GW Basic actually, but whatever. And, I just progressed through. And then in college, I got my degree in computer science, and I've worked as a freelancer and then as a consultant and then as a freelancer again and as a consultant again. And then for the last 5 years, I've worked for a large healthcare organization, my first time as actual staff in an IT org, not as a consultant or as a freelancer delivering some specific project. And that's the background and the perspective that I'm coming into this conversation with. So to answer the question of whether or not you should get into whatever you're going to call it, coding, be a software developer, get into IT or tech, the answer to the question is actually a question back. Why do you want to get into this? Because from my perspective, and I'm very biased here, but if you're just looking at this as a paycheck, and hey, you get paid very well. Don't believe the inflated salaries that you hear thrown around. Oh, you can make $400,000. If you've got a PhD and you've published research papers and stuff like that, yeah, maybe. But I suspect even that stuff's going to be going away as the AI bubble bursts. If this is just, hey, a lot of people that I came up with got in and, worked in consulting for a while, and they could program kinda, but it was a means to an end. Their goal was to get into management. They're now directors or VPs at other organizations. And in my opinion, they drive me crazy. They used to be technical. Their hands-on coding skills, you don't understand how fast. This isn't riding a bicycle. People forget the work that goes into this. If, on the other hand, actually you wouldn't even be asking the question if you're just a software developer. On the weekend, do you have your own GitHub and you've got all these silly projects? It's not necessarily for a portfolio to get a job. No, this is stuff that you're working on the weekend. If that's you, then absolutely, this is where you belong. And the reason I'm saying that is I think we're coming into what is going to be an extraordinarily exciting time to be a software developer. The AI is not going to replace us. It is going to augment us. You're going to spend less time on boring drudgery, just boilerplate code, the stuff that the AI has been trained on. Yeah, you're going to use it to do that. But the cool stuff, the stuff that there is no training data for the AI to use, that's where you're going to shine. That's where your opportunity is. And also, these same people that I was just talking about who, they maybe they made it to a senior level, but then they became a manager and then a director and they got out of it. They're not pulling work items out of the backlog and delivering them. They're not reviewing PRs anymore. They're downstream now. I went up the value chain, whatever. They are going to be vibe coding and they're going to be creating the opportunities for you because they're going to build stuff that doesn't really work and they don't understand it. They don't understand the LLM. A lot of these people, you constantly hear the thing about these are inscrutable parrots. They just repeat what they've heard. They don't actually understand the stuff. And so if you're the type that, you know what a finite state machine is, you know the difference between an inner and outer join, you know what von Neumann architecture is, if you know how operating systems work behind the scenes, how threads get scheduled, how memory gets allocated and importantly deallocated, all of those type of things you're going to need to know. And it's going to be a lot more difficult because here's the funny piece. When you hear learn to code, be really skeptical because you'll have people, and these are kind of the people that I'm saying you probably don't want to get into this because it's not just learning a language. Learning Python or learning JavaScript or C# or Java, that's like the door fee to get into the club. Once you're in here, you need to know how the infrastructure works. How do firewalls, how do you make a bastion box? How do you secure your application so that frickin' North Korean hackers aren't taking you down and stealing all of the personal data that your application is collected? The way that the business, the ins and outs of the business that aren't documented. There is no training data for the AI to be trained on. It's these little details that, that dude who's worked in the company for 30 years and he knows all of the little details of how stuff actually gets done. It's not training data. It's, a lot of the time what's actually documented in the manual is not how stuff gets done. And as a software developer, and I use the term software developer intentionally, I am not a coder. I'm a software developer. A coder is a person who just learned the language. They can do front end or they can do middle tier. They can't go anywhere and do anything. You're not writing Terraform, building the CI/CD pipeline, writing functional and unit tests, and. And so here's where the punchline to the joke comes in is, you think, I just need to learn how to prompt the AI to generate my code. Yes, you do. But you also need to know all of that other stuff I just mentioned. You're going to need to know how to do a state machine and be able to look at the code that the AI just generated and go, that should actually be a state machine. There should be a switch statement and we should be tracking the state and we should be transitioning from one node to the next. And depending upon what node we're in, that's going to control what we do next. Those type of details, you're going to have to know how to do that stuff in addition to knowing how to do good prompting. And what I'm finding as I'm working with Copilot, I've not bothered to use Claude because behind the scenes, Copilot's using Claude anyway. And besides, Claude code is just VS Code anyway. So anyway, aside from the point, you're going to have to know all of this stuff. And if you're just looking for a 9-to-5 job, I honestly think that there will be easier choices. I do not believe that, and I do not see AI being able to replace humans. There's a lot of different reasons. Very simple reason right off the bat is, who are they going to blame? Who eats the sin when whatever it is doesn't work? When things go wrong, whose throat gets choked? You can't do anything to the AI. You're going to sue OpenAI. You're going to sue Google, Microsoft. Who you're going after? Who you're going to fire? Because what got delivered absolutely doesn't work. They're going to want to put a person in that chain, and that person is going to be responsible for, in this case, they're going to be responsible for that code. You'll take that work item out of the backlog and you'll sit there and work with whatever it is, Gemini. Anyway, you'll work with an LLM, you'll get the code, and you'll go through the whole process, and eventually it'll get delivered to production. And the expectation that the business is going to have is that what got delivered to production was production quality. And if it isn't, they're coming after you. And are you ready for that? If you're not willing to step up and do that, then I would say go find work doing something else that is better suited to your passions. Because seriously, if you're not, right now I'm working on building an agentic host that is going to do AI stuff. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. I just want to build it because I'm very curious. I also have a bunch of cheap yellow displays in a box back there. I don't know if you see the advertisements for the clocks that have, they look like old vacuum tubes, but they're actually LCD displays. What I want to build is something that looks just like that. I'm going to have to go to Makerspace and do the wood to encase the cheap yellow displays and make the box. But the code that it's going to run is going to pull data from New Relic, and it's going to show the state of the different nodes in my lab, so that it'll show the CPU, memory, disk, and network I/O, and it'll show me, the status of all of the different nodes. It'll roll through the whole cluster, and I'll have 4 of them doing that for me. That's the type of stuff I'm doing. I'm not playing golf on the weekends. Yes, I spend a lot of time in the gym, but I spend even more time with my hands on the keyboard writing code. If that's not what you're into, I would say that there are probably much better choices, and go study law, honestly. There are other areas that will be intellectually challenging, but if this isn't your passion, I would say don't do this. It's not worth it. That's kind of my position with regard to whether or not you should get into software development, or if you're already in, like me, whether or not you should stay. If you're burned out, there's no shame in it. You've done it, been there, done that. I'm out of here. Plenty of people in all professions eventually are like, yeah, I'm done. I'm not. I'm more, if anything, I'm more into it. I wish I had even more time, because what's going on has me so excited. So I'm so excited about what's going on. I'm spending all my time building stuff, and I'm getting into the AI. And here on this video, I show you the workflow that I've been evolving working with GitHub Copilot. It'll work with any of the LLMs. I don't care if you're using Claude Code, or I guess Google's, I don't know what Google calls their tool, but any of the tools, this workflow is going to work with them. And it's about doing more than just vibe coding. It's about getting the prompt right in the first place. On the other side is, if you're going to live a high-tech lifestyle, I mean, what's more high-tech than injecting yourself with research chemicals? So this video, you can see where I've been using BPC 157 to avoid having knee surgery, and it's worked really well. So click there to see that adventure. And until next time, I hope you'll subscribe. I hope you make it this far, and give me a like. I'd like to hear your comments. What do you think about the future of software development? And until next time, see you later. Bye.